Hey guys, Strim Tom here. Today we are going to be talking about the Falconer. That's right, the brand new enhancement tree added to Dungeons & Dragons Online. It allows you to have a pet falcon that you can use to attack stuff, crowd control some stuff, and overall it's pretty cool. There's a couple interesting features about the actual Falconer tree that I like a lot that I wanted to go over in this video and kind of detail out so you can get an idea of how good Falconer is and what you can expect out of it going forward. So there's a couple cool things you can do with Falconer. The biggest thing is actually attack with the Falcon. You get a couple moves you can do. The first attack is called Diving Attack, and it's a trip. It knocks guys over, does a bit of damage, and the knockdown is actually a helpless attack, so it causes them to become helpless for about 6 seconds, and in that 6 seconds you can definitely do some good wailing. The second attack is called Go for the Eyes. Go for the Eyes allows you to do a single target melee attack, or ranged attack if you have a ranged weapon, and hit the target, causing them to be blinded. The blind effect also causes them to become helpless, so it's relatively powerful. Being able to blind or knock down a guy and make them helpless, in either case, they're not hitting you back and they're dying. It's really useful. And then another nice attack you get is called Coordinated Strike. It's an area of effect attack in which you kind of swing your weapon in a big circle. The Falcon comes down, attacks all the guys that are nearby, and does a whole heap and help and damage, as well as blinding everything that gets hit. Now, the blind actually affects targets that are even generally immune to blind, thinking about earth elementals, golems, and the like, and does cause them to become helpless. Oddly enough, Coordinated Strike blind, the area of effect, doesn't actually cause targets to become helpless, so do keep that in mind, that it won't give you extra damage, it just gives you more survivability. Now, I play this character as a melee, and I'm a wisdom-based character, 12 fighter, 12 rogue, 4 fighter, 4 rogue, and 4 paladin, because I really wanted to see what exactly would happen when I was actually playing around and messing around with the Falconer tree as opposed to the racial enhancements. So I did take some time to look into the character and try to build it as best I could. I came up with some couple optimizations. I'm playing an elf, which gives me access to displacement and makes me very, very tanky, and I decided to go elf as well so I could spot traps instantaneously, which you're going to see in a clip coming up later in this video. Now, on top of that, the Falconer tree is really weird. The actual melee attacks is a bit of a delay when you use them. So as you can see here, I attacked with my diving attack and then the Falcon kind of swooped down afterwards. That bit of a delay, I don't know how it feels when it's ranged, but when you're melee, I'm going to be honest, it feels really, really clunky. It feels like oftentimes you'll make the attack when you really need to stay alive. You're attacking the target because you don't want to die, you don't want to get run over, but then by the time you actually get your attack off and it hits the target, they're usually dead. Now, of course, my character does a very high amount of damage, just considering the type of weapons that I'm using. My falchion, actually, is the type of weapon that I'm using, and so most targets end up dying before they actually get hit by the area of effect or the single target knockdown or blind, which is not very good. I kind of think that if there was maybe a little bit of a shorter delay, the delay on the effect is actually, I think it's 3 seconds between when you attack and when the monster gets knocked down, which is just a little bit too long. Even monsters with 600 or 700 health are still dying in 3 seconds at level 10, and that was making it so that I pretty much never used the skills unless they were on a orange name monster. Now, of course, you do get wisdom-based known the angles called Deadly Instinct, in which you can raise the DCs of your tactical feats and your damage as an insight bonus equal to half your wisdom modifier. Instead of casting mana, like it does from other trees, this tree doesn't give you mana. Instead, it has charges, and you get your charges back by using your Falcon attacks. So you want to be using your Falcon attacks as often as possible. Now, my character ended up being pretty tanky. I like the way that it actually ended up working a lot in certain combat scenarios because I had displacement, because I could knock stuff down, especially if I was fighting one single target. I was able to stay alive, even fighting inside different spells, like I'm fighting in a blade barrier right here, and there's a Otto's dancing sphere going over top of my head. Because I have 4 levels of paladin, and I'm part rogue and part fighter, all of my saves are relatively high, and I don't worry too much about the actual defense of my character. I kind of just focus primarily on the offense. The defense mostly comes in, or the active defense portion is my Falcon attacks. But again, as I said, because there's that bit of a delay, I find in most cases, if you need to get saved immediately, you're still going to die using your Falcon attacks. And the worst feeling is when you target a monster, but for whatever reason, whether it's because of range or something else, you hit the wrong target with the Falcon, so it doesn't actually go on the target that you want, which does happen every once in a while. I find it's not very good. Now, granted, fighting a lot of these Earth Elementals, I did have a very easy time just slamming these guys with my weapons, and it worked out really well. But yeah, you definitely you definitely find some scenarios where you're not too tanky. Another problem this class has is recovery mechanics. So you can see me getting mauled by a bunch of dragons. I had really no way to recover. I did have access to lay on hands that I could use on myself twice from my paladin, but falconry didn't really give me any type of recovery mechanics, and because I wasn't playing a class with recovery, I definitely ran into a couple problems trying to sustain. Now, granted, my damage was really high, and I liked the fact that my damage was there. I could do stuff, I could hit stuff, and I could be fairly effective in a combat scenario. But again, it was all about that recovery. If I took a whole bunch of damage, I'd really have to back out of a fight, and I was focused almost exclusively on scroll healing myself and others. Now, being part rogue and part paladin and having a bunch of charisma for my saves meant my use magic device was high enough that using scrolls and wands wasn't too big of a deal, but playing on Reaper mode, it does become a little bit tedious trying to do the healing on yourself, which is why I do recommend always playing with other people who can potentially heal you, so that way you can heal them and they can heal you. One of the things I do like is the combination between the two-handed weapon and the sneak attacks. I don't have it right now, but later when I will be taking two-handed fighting feat line, I'll be able to get sneak attacks proccing on my glancing blows, which is going to be pretty good for the overall damage of the character. And that's one thing I do like about this character, is it does a heck load of damage. Once monsters are either crowd controlled or not moving, I start ripping through them. One of the things you do get out of the falconry tree that's pretty good is called No Mercy. It's an extra 30% additional damage against helpless opponents. You happen to be able to make helpless opponents all the time with your knockdown and your blind. Against normal monsters, the blind and the knockdown don't matter too much. You'll actually notice me not using those attacks fairly often, just because by the time my falcon actually lands on the guys, usually the monsters are already dead. And the animation can be pretty lengthy. It's a little bit cleaner with a one-handed weapon, but with a two-handed weapon, I do this like awkward spin, and then you have this like almost 1 second of just straight dead time after you do your spin where you can't attack targets. I have yet to learn a way to animation cancel. If I can figure that out, that'll make it a lot more valuable. But like I said, the clunkiness of the way that it feels in melee is just not very good with a lot of the attacks. So I'm hoping it either feels better when it's ranged, but fortunately for me, I was playing with a bear druid. If you're noticing on screen, pretty much all the monsters are always permanently stunned. That's actually bear druids. They're really, really good. They have the ability to cast the spell Roar, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything is stunned. Nothing is moving, and everything dies very quickly. So we're playing on, I think, Reaper 3 in these clips. Everything dies. Now, as you can see here, I just walked over to that trap on the wall, and then it popped open. It's one of my favorite things about playing this character so far. I really appreciate that I don't have to search for traps. Plus, I've been finding, actually, new traps that I didn't know about. So I like that fact. It's this weird synergy that you don't think about. The fact that having all this extra wisdom means that I can actually have the spot high enough and the search high enough to be able to search out the traps without even requiring too many items or too much investment. Now my character is actually, I'm using a two-handed weapon because I wanted to be the dual-wield falcon build, so I'm actually using a falchion on this character. I've never used falchions before as a weapon, and so I figured I'd give it a shot and see how it is. Now it definitely does feel good to crit a lot. I don't even have improved crit in a lot of these games and a lot of the footage here. So actually none of the footage I have improved crit. So all the critical hits you're seeing is just me without improved crit, and how often I can get that going. I do crit pretty often, and I'm excited to see what happens when I actually get out there with the falchion at the end game. The character here, of course, being the dual wield falcon build. If you mispronounce falchion, you can say it's falcon, and combining those two things means, hey, look at me, I've got a falcon and I'm flying around me, and I've got a falcon in my main hand. So overall, I like the character. It's fun to play, and it's engaging. I think that's really one of the main things with this character, is that it's very fun to play. It provides a different way to look at different combat styles, but if it was up to me, I would make the actual attack time on the falcons probably 1 second shorter, so that way the falcon comes down, and then you can actually crowd control guys. I don't want it to be instantaneous like stunning blow. I think there should be a sacrifice, given that it's a trip and a blind, which works on more targets than something like a simple stun to cause helplessness. So I do think that there should be a bit of a delay, a bit of an opportunity cost there, but in most cases the opportunity cost seems a bit high, considering it's a blind, it's a knockdown, it's an effect that's supposed to keep you alive, but really doesn't do a whole lot once the tide turns and you start taking a whole bunch of damage. So this character having a weakness as well in the sustain department makes it a little bit not good. If I was to take this character into epics, I would definitely make sure I have the meld into darkness effect from rogue, in which you can give yourself 100% dodge. I think that's just too good to pass up on a character like this, so you get displacement going and the 100% dodge, and I think that's just genuinely very, very, very good. So yeah, so the character's a lot of fun. If you are looking to play Falconer, I definitely recommend you try it out. You don't have to do this build per se. It's probably going to work out better if you're playing probably Monk or Cleric or Favored Soul, but I do like the fact that my character's got some sneak attack damage. I got some cool options I can do in combat, and it works out really well. I'm probably going to be taking this character all the way up to level 20 to see how it plays, but I don't think I'm going to be going to 30, especially if the Barbarian changes are coming out sooner than later, so I can play Azamar, Barbarian, the Heal Barbarian. So I'll show you the build guide here. Alright guys, so here we go. Here is my Falconer character that I've been playing around with. I'm currently level 12. My character build is 4 Fighter, 4 Paladin, and 4 Rogue. Might seem a little bit strange, but there actually is a reason for that. A couple reasons, actually. And of course, this character is a Wisdom-based character. Wisdom is how I get most of my damage. I have a surprising amount of Strength, but Wisdom is really where it comes from. There's a couple reasons for the breakdown. I wanted to make sure I was focusing on Falconer first and other stuff later. So I figured if I evenly distribute my classes, I can't, at this point, even take tier 5 in any of the class trees, which means I have to take tier 5 in Falconer. And doing so will let me really push the Falconer, see how good it is, and kind of be able to amplify and look at the skills there. So the way I've got my character set up is I am playing an elf, actually. The reason I'm playing elf is there's twofold. Number one, I'm pulling up, of course, where's that feat? The Dragon Mark feat, least Dragon Mark of Shadow, and I'll explain that in just a second, but I am using the Dragon Mark. It gives me a displacement, which is really cool, out of the elf tree. And on top of that, out of the elf racial enhancements, I am also getting Nothing is Hidden, so that I am actually capable of seeing traps automatically. It's just for free, I just get to see the traps, which is pretty valuable. And I think is something that I didn't really appreciate as much. Now, I've never played a character with a high wisdom, or at least a rogue with a high wisdom, so my spot was never high enough to make this work. The way it works is that you need to make a search and a spot check, and if both your search and spot are better than the trap at a -4 penalty, you'll automatically detect it. So being an elf, getting the bonus listen, search, and spot, also taking bonus listen, search, and spot, and then getting the Falcon, which gives me bonus spot. My character actually has decently high search and spot, with a 47 search and a 53 spot at level 12, meaning I can spot all the traps for free, so I just walk around and the traps just suddenly appear. Thank you for being loud, phone. My god. So the way that my character is actually designed, I took the 4 levels of Paladin, so that way I could actually take the feat Extend Spell, and then out of the enhancement tree for Elf, I take Greater Dragon Mark of Shadow. This means I can automatically cast Displacement, and since I can extend the spell, it's going to last, instead of, what, 1 minute and 12 seconds on me, it lasts 2 minutes and 24 seconds, and of course I can just double the duration. Having Displacement on a melee character is really, really powerful, and on a character that doesn't have as many interesting utilities and tools as maybe like a pure class, or maybe as much health or defense, it's very, very useful. Now, this character is actually interesting because I do have a lot of really good tools. I'm going to go over those tools here. The reason for the rogue is, of course, the trapping skills, and I wanted to make sure I was playing a class that I didn't have anything valuable out of the enhancement trees. I'm using a two-handed weapon, so that way Assassin's basically useless, Mechanic's useless, and I'm not using a staff, so Thief Acrobat's kind of useless. The fighter levels is I'm going to be putting points in Kensai. I want to be able to get Strike with no thought. It gives a +2 competence bonus to critical damage multiplier. Since my character is built around using falchions, I wanted to make sure that, well, if I'm going to be using falchions, I want to have the extra critical threat multiplier. This character, instead of using like an actual good weapon, falchions, because I figured Falcon and Falcon, I'm the dual-wield Falcon build. If you mispronounce Falchion, it's Falcon, so that kind of ends up working out there. The extra +1 critical threat or multiplier is really big since I've already got the extended threat range, so this character will be able to hit pretty hard as I go forward, and I'm sure as you saw in the clips before, it hits pretty hard as it is. Out of the actual falconry tree, I'm using Diving, Attack, Go for the Eyes Strike, and Coordinated Strike, as well as the good stuff, Death from Above Strike, Thrill of the Hunt Strike, and Mark the Prey Strike. Of course, everything has Strike in it to indicate that it's a melee, but nah. Now, the things that I find interesting about this tree is that there's really good stuff, like Practice Accuracy with +2 to hit is just super powerful. I don't recommend putting more than 1 point in either Diving, Attack, or in Go for the Eyes. All it does is give you additional damage, but the damage really doesn't matter. Most targets die, and all the damage that the bird does are scaled down in Reaper mode. So for me that plays Reaper mode, it's not really worth it to actually take. The target's going to die. If I play in Elite difficulty, same problem, target's going to die, so the added bird damage doesn't really matter. So I don't generally need to care too much about these actual effects. So instead, we just go ahead and we go with Coordinated Strike being the thing that we invest in the most, because this ability is crazy. It's just a good AoE. It doesn't usually kill everything because there's a lot of monsters, and you don't have a lot of AoE attacks, so this blind is very, very valuable, and it works on everything. Now we do take Killer Instinct 1 and 2 and Deadly Instinct, so you get the Wisdom base, Know the Angles. This one's really valuable. You're going to be spamming your bird abilities just because in the event that you don't kill your target, knocking them down is useful. And Deadly Instinct here, of course, gets recharged whenever you use your bird abilities. So out of stuff to avoid in the tree, you could take Action Boost Sprint, although I didn't. I kind of went for the more passive utility like gaining True Seeing and immunity to blindness. But if you wanted to, you could in fact take Action Boost Sprint. It is an option. It's a good action boost, especially if you're trying to get an extra action boost for prowess in the epic levels. Wanderlust is just not good. I wouldn't recommend taking that. You could take Rugged, although I think that 3 points per 6 physical resistance rating on this type of character isn't as important. So I put more points into Out in Nature. And I think that Hunter's Knowledge, where you gain animals as a favorite enemy, is fantastic. It's +2 to hit and damage against all animal type monsters. And if you happen to be a ranger of some kind, it gives you +2 against all your favorite enemies, which is just really, really good. Now the cores themselves, of course, you're going to be taking Wisdom. You can take any point, but I took Wisdom for this character. And then you get the additional cores like Well-Rounded. But yeah, so the character build's pretty simple. The feats that I actually decided to take were pretty complicated and weird. So I started with Power Attack at level 1, taking my first level as Rogue. And then I took my second level as Fighter, getting an extra bonus feat so I could take Cleave. And then I took my third, I believe it was at 3rd level, I also took, not Extend Spell, the Dragon Mark of Shadow, and then at level 6 is when I took Completionist. So I do take Completionist on this character because I have so many different stats that I have to balance: Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, even Charisma for Use Magic Device. And when I did the leveling, I did a level of Rogue and then 2 levels of something else. So like a level of Rogue, 2 Fighter, then a level of Rogue, 2 Paladin, a level of Rogue, 2 Paladin, a level of Rogue, 2 Fighter. And the reason why I did it exactly like this, I wanted to get Paladin as quickly as possible. Level 4 Paladin means you actually have access to the Extend Spell feat. I don't use the Paladin spells. I have Divine Favor, but I pretty much never use it. Instead, just taking the 4 levels of Paladin, so I would have access to Extend. I got that at level 9. It's pretty good. I like that a lot. And also, Paladin gives you Divine Grace, so you can add Charisma to your saves, so my saves are all decently high. So even though my dexterity is not that great and I don't have any dexterity items, my reflex save is still pretty good, and I can dodge most things in most parts of the content. Of course, traps are a little bit scarier, but that's pretty much fine. Now I'll actually go through my itemization and my gear right now. So I don't have a cloak on. That's hilarious. The items that I'm using right now, I've got the Illicit Warding Armor. This is one of the new armor pieces from the new quest packs. I think this comes from the Prison Break one. I can't remember what that's called. The Price of Freedom, I think. And so this one is really powerful. It's just got Constitution, Spell Resistance, and 10% Concealment, which is kind of nice. Now, of course, this doesn't actually stack with Displacement. Before I got Displacement, really useful effect. I also have a new item, the Precision Lens. This is a great item. I don't really care about the Insightful Strength too much, but melee alacrity 6% is nice, and Manslayer pretty much in low levels is Vorpal. As long as you're hitting a humanoid target, it's just a cheap Vorpal. It's kind of nice to have. Now, I do have a Slave Lord's bonus, so I'm rocking full Slave Lords with the Executioner's Helm with Slave Lord's Might. I've also got Chains going on here. I'm just going to move this so that when that spot pops up, that's fine. So I've got Chains going. This is for Devotion. I don't need Devotion, but I want the Wisdom. I've got Wisdom and Quality Wisdom, which is what I've got on here. The item I just recommend you look into or invest in. I have the Symbol of the Slave Lords. I slotted mine with Master's Gift and Heavy Fortification. The Master's Gift is just awesome, being able to turn your Voice of the Master into an augment and then slot it into something. You can do that by just getting both the Voice of the Master, the Mantle of the World Shaper, the Cloak that also gives you 5% experience points, and then 5 greater tokens of the 12, and you can combine them and create that little augment you can slot into whatever you want. The Symbol of Slave Lords is just really great as a general item because it gives True Seeing, 10% Concealment, and Insightful Constitution. So I use this pretty much every life. It's a very versatile trinket. And then you also slap in some Heavy Fortification, and it's your be-all, end-all from level 8 to 20. I don't have a cloak. Belt, I'm again using Slave Lord stuff, so I got Slave Lord's Might, I got some Charisma and some Accuracy, which is kind of good. I have a lot of overlap in some of my stats. 5 rings for Constitution, and Resistance, so plus all saves, and +1 UMD, can't complain. The Leather Gloves of the Snake are a brand new item. I do recommend if you're playing any type of rogue, you get yourself some of these, because it's got Search, Spot, Open Lock, and Disable Device, +8 for level 6. Kind of blows the Keylock Ring out of the water, because Keylock Ring is +10 for 10. This is +8 for 6, so good for level 6, and you don't really use your glove slot too often when you're playing rogue. Plus it goes, mine's Mythic and Reaper. Ooh. My boots, I just have some move speed boots, because you gotta have some move speed. My other ring, I've got a Strength 5 rings. I'm mostly using it for the Slave Lord set. And then my bracers, I'm actually using some shackles with intelligence, quality intelligence. I actually don't need the Seeker because I didn't realize at the time that Executioner's Helmet already had it when I crafted it, but whatever, it's for the Slave Lord's bonus. The weapons that I find myself primarily using is pretty much the Barovian Falchion. Barovian items are really powerful. I do recommend if you're leveling, you grab one of these because this item is just super duper good. It gives holy, fiery, undead bane, and it's very, very powerful. It does a good amount of base damage. Another weapon that I have been using on and off, I will show off here, is this new weapon, the Echo of Black Razor. It's a really cool weapon. The heroic version is interesting. Every time you get a kill, you get an extra melee damage and a melee power. You don't notice it too much in Reaper mode, actually, because of the way the damage is scaled. You don't actually feel it. But if you play it in non-Reaper mode, like Elite difficulty, it's huge. So when I do my regular auto attacks, I'm hitting for about 60 right now. Once the Echo of Black Razor is fully charged up, all of a sudden my damage jumps up to like 75 a strike, which is pretty good. Plus it makes you immune to charm spells and psionic dominate. It's just convenient if you happen to be going up against like mind flayers that are going to dominate you. And it does some untyped damage, which means it can penetrate everything. And it has Keen on it. So if you're playing a character like I didn't have improved critical until level 12, this is very powerful for that. So that's pretty much my gear. The last thing I'm going to go over here is the cosmetics that I'm wearing. So I actually am using a cosmetic of the Echo of Black Razor. I thought it was really cool. I really like the actual weapon itself. One of the reasons why I did use it as a cosmetic is because if you actually look at it, it's got kind of like stars going all over it. The weapon, it looks like it's kind of like a space theme. So I decided to chuck on the Ravenloft weapon Glamour, which is kind of like this wave here. And as the wave moves through, it kind of looks like the stars are actually moving on the weapon. So it's kind of like swirling, looking like a kind of cool space effect. So I like that a lot. I thought that was pretty neato for my character. And then I'm using also the Heavy Armor of Celebration. I just happen to like the Heavy Armor of Celebration. I think it looks really good, and I think it goes to the whole outfit. I kind of wish I actually had a better eyes. I should have probably taken a different set of Reaper eyes. I went with green this life, not realizing how it was going to look out. So I don't really want to spend another million platinum to pick up a new one. And of course I have the Snowy Falcon. I kind of wish my hair was white or something, or maybe even black, but it's a lilac, so there's that. Anyways, so that's the character, and that's the build. I'll be posting a build probably in the link here, or like in the description. So if you want to give this one a shot, it's pretty fun. I like it a lot. It's really versatile, and hopefully it'll still be fun when it hits all the way at 20. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. So you have a super day, and I will catch you guys later.